well.
So that's a new jingle with a new instrument, the banjo, done by our guest Calum Gray, who is my brother. Coincidentally. And today, this is episode 9, and today we're asking the question, is this the end of work as we know it? Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we've got Calum here, so why don't you tell us a bit about yourself, Calum?
Oh, it's great to be here on the podcast, Euan.
Yeah.
I'm actually my flatmate also hosts a podcast, which I'm on.
So the world famous podcast.
Yeah, cool. It's the Staying Up Late podcast, so you guys can check that out.
You don't need to mention it.
That's household name and well.
And so I'm Euan's younger brother, and I'm currently studying a honours in history, but also have a law degree because I don't know what I'm doing with my life. And so currently this year my thesis is on naval impressment in early 18th century Britain, which was the practice of kind of forced recruitment of sailors into the navy through sort of threats and intimidation, which was kind of a controversial topic and a topic of a lot of political
I'm glad
discussion.
someone's finally addressing it.
Trust me, I'm not the only one. I have to say, when it always kind of astonishes me when you look at like academic writing, like the specificity of the stuff academics write about is really kind of insane.
Yeah, well, it's like our uncle who writes about Victorian
prisons. Yeah.
But you can go so deep into it, can't you?
Yeah.
I mean, my mum's obsessed with like Tudor England.
Yeah.
And like there and like she's just read hundreds of books on it from like, various writers, and it's just like there's always another angle to view it from.
Yeah.
I suppose it's it, isn't it? There's just always another perspective.
Yeah.
What can you? Is this a stupid question? Is it possible to summarize what you've anything like?
What my research is looking at is I'm sort of looking at more the political debates about it, because it was so it was basically like they would literally just take like sailors off ships and off the street and force them into serve in the navy, because basically serving in the navy was so horrible and the pay was generally worse than serving on like merchant ships. Basically, no one wanted to do it, and so they needed people to do it. So they would literally just force them to do it. It was kind of like a form of kind of like coercion and recruitment. And so, but it was often like very controversial. People would like get into those often riots against it, because obviously people didn't like just being randomly taken and forced to serve in the navy.
Yeah.
And so my sort of thesis is looking at like the kind of political dimensions of it, and like the debates that they had about it in Parliament and their attempts to abolish the practice, which kind of never went anywhere, and like the way that people mobilized political ideas and the debates around it. So it's kind of like drawing on a lot of like British political history that I've been reading, and so yeah, that's kind of what my thesis is about.
Wow, that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, hopefully someone
look forward to reading that one.
Coming to a bookshop near you.
Coming to a filing cabinet at the university.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're thinking, so we're mulling over what sort of topics we could address today, and we thought the future of work could be quite a good one.
Yeah. So Calum read an article, an interesting article about it, and how it has changed over the what people think of work has changed and how it's perceived over time, I suppose.
Yeah.
So you're saying that you're gone.
Yeah. Well, so I was talking about how kind of the way, which I thought was an interesting topic, about how particularly young, reasonably affluent, and especially men, actually even more so than women, now work a lot more than they used to. Especially white-collar workers now tend to work more than white-collars, work longer hours than white-collar workers did 20, 30 years ago. Like traditionally what happened is people who are blue-collar, doing hard labour would work longer hours, and white-collar jobs are almost considered more cushy kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that's quite different now, whereas a lot of the time people work longer hours who are, in these kind of white-collar jobs. And it's also talking about how the way that kind of work is almost like viewed now as almost in a way more central to people's almost like self-fulfillment. Like if you think about, I know the way that a lot of people in our generation are like raised that you should have a job that you love, and one that's either helping change the world, or it's very different when compared to 100 years ago when most people just worked in factories or on a farm, and that basically just how many bolts can you screw onto this thing per day, so there's no illusion of having a job that's terribly meaningful, but in some ways these things almost set people up for disappointment and make people more miserable, because if you feel like your job needs to be meaningful and important, when it's not, you're going to be constantly disappointed. But the reality is most jobs aren't. Most jobs are just things which need to happen, and someone's got to do them.
No, right. Yeah.
That's so funny. Yeah. Yeah, I wonder, because you're so right. Like you are just, your whole life, like this generation in particular. I mean, probably our parents' generation didn't have that same ethos of...
But it might have been more there for the, our parents' generation than our grandparents' generation, so it would have been even less,
Yeah, go work down the mine.
Yeah.
Well, it was very much like a means to an end. Your job was your fuel that fueled your life. And then let you experience other time. But yeah, you're so right. It's tied into your identity now.
Yeah.
Like, who are you? I'm a insurance broker, and I love it because blah blah blah.
Well, I find it interesting how, even when I've been applying for jobs, like graduate positions, that there's so many jobs now which they expect you to be passionate for.
Yeah.
And they literally put that on the I was talking to people who were applying for accountancy firms, and it's we're looking for passionate young accountancy graduates. Or I often think who is are people that I'm sure there are people who are good with maths. I want to be an accountant. They probably don't mind doing it. But are they that just that passionate about accounting?
I love GST.
I just can't sleep.
I just can't really get up and run the textbooks. Maybe we have accountants in our listening audience who are just I love accounting so much.
Yeah, they're just oh, well, how dare they smear my good profession.
Yeah.
Well, maybe one day when if your business gets big enough and you start hiring people, you'll be saying, we're looking for people who are passionate about 3D visualization.
Yeah, they should be. But you're so right. I mean, the essence of a job is to, find efficiencies, make it repetitive and redundant. I mean, it kind of reminds you of Weather a little bit, It's amazing. It's an amazing place. But in essence, at least some jobs you are in a factory and you're producing 100 swords or whatever, and from it working in London and everything, people think at Weta, if you work at Weta, you're just hand sculpting this beautiful thing. But realistically, some people are doing that, but a lot of people are putting on paint and wiping it off again to make it look old, which is fine for a bit, but it is not dissimilar to working in a different factory, apart from the end thing is cool and going to be on a film. But if everyone was hand making the things and all beautiful and everything, it would firstly cost heaps, and secondly it'll be different or whatever, so it's that is kind of the process of business, is to find efficiencies and make things repeatable and
or break things down into their smallest parts, and then you have people who can do those parts really efficiently.
Exactly. But that's interesting.
So why has it become like this? Why has it why is suddenly the expectation that you've got to love your job?
I'm not sure. It's kind of, I guess, I don't know, cultural change. It's kind of hard to explain why it happens,
Yeah, because I wonder, our parents, our father's a dairy farmer. I mean, he does love it.
Dad really is. I'm sure he is someone who really is quite passionate about dairy farming.
But was he passionate when he was milking cows at 3 o'clock in the morning when he was our age? I'm not sure if he would have been.
Well, I think I remember Dad saying this to me about how, ages ago, I can't really remember when, but just saying that, a job that, you really like is not necessarily a job where, you enjoy every component part of it, because, the reality is any job, even if it's, your dream job, there's probably going to be admin work which, you don't enjoy doing. Say you're an actor, I don't know, maybe that's your dream job, but I bet they hate doing all those, interviews they have to do to promote new movies, but it's just a part of the job, and, it's a bit shit, but that doesn't mean it's not a good job,
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's even YouTubers, that's another fact, apparently in high schools in America in particular, they ask, what's your dream job? And, YouTuber was the biggest one.
Oh,
in
really?
Terms of, dream
influencer.
Job. Influencer, YouTuber, and, even part of that, it's all good to see someone sitting there and, it's, making so much money for this easy job, but I'm sure there's a lot of parts which are really shit and boring. And
I'm sure being a YouTuber is, being a successful YouTuber is also, a really hard job, I would imagine.
I think so too, yeah. And it's funny, part of you and I starting a business was that it was going to be really hard, and therefore really rewarding when if it pays off and we actually succeed with it. So I mean, does part of the reason for doing it was that it was going to be a really big challenge, and we weren't going to necessarily enjoy ourselves for the first year or so. And I don't know how much or if there's much expectation from people wanting to do that anymore. Or should a job be really hard and miserable for a high payoff? I don't know.
Yeah, it's hard to say. And you're saying as well about white collar jobs, like, young males working longer hours. Like, I think it's a part of this kind of.
It's almost like a status thing.
Yeah, it's like I work really hard, and like I
It's
work
like
hard to work harder,
or to have an impressive LinkedIn account or something.
Yeah. It's bizarre. And it's like, I think there's a lot of people in our public eye, like The Rock is an example of that. He's a very popular celebrity, but he's always on about like, you got to work hard, you got to grind, you got to be passionate, you got to do all this stuff. Like, that's how I became successful. But it's got to be hard, and if it's not hard, then you're not doing the right thing, sort of thing.
I often think also with like, there are probably. This is not true, I'm sure, for a lot of jobs, but I reckon with certain jobs, like becoming, say, a famous actor, I reckon you probably just have to like work really hard and be lucky. Because like, I reckon like with a lot of those people, like, I'm sure The Rock did work incredibly hard, but there's probably people who work just as hard as him who did not end up having a successful career. And like, you don't know which one you're going to be, Yeah,
that's why. Yeah, I actually just think about it all the time. Well, not all the time. Sometimes, you hear all these people like, you just got to keep grinding, persevere. But how many people have done that and are just like, at the end, like, shit, that was a massive waste. I've been persevering for the last 40 years. And I'm dynamic. Whatever, just chill out and stay on the beach. Don't worry about it.
We hear the success stories, but none of the failure stories.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I don't know.
But it's also as well, like, I think, I don't know if it's like the psyche, but you almost feel guilty for, not working. Do you? I mean, I don't know if that's a widespread thing, but
I get that.
I think it's for sure.
It's just nice and relaxing.
Oh god, there is a certain pedestal for the man or the woman who works all the time really hard. It's like, wow, they are passionate, they are dedicated, like they are successful, right? And is success like putting your whole life into something and having no personal time?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a weird thing, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. It's bizarre.
I guess you kind of need, like, I mean, like Elon, like if you had a society where everyone was like Elon Musk, like that would probably be kind of a miserable society, But you probably need some people like that,
Yeah, I think.
But like a lot of people are not going to be, I don't know.
Yeah, like artists or I mean, I'm sure artists work very hard, and I'm sure, but anyway, it's all like that life. Sometimes the best things are made with it in a relaxed life where, like, you have just a spurt of inspiration, and then that is all you need. You don't need to be like grinding. And actually, I think like with what we're doing a little bit, like coming from work where you're like, sweet, you need to work 9 hours of the day because that's your job, to go into something where it's not an hour. Like, the result is not tied to how much time you put into it. It's actually like, what important things have you done in your day which have a purpose.
Yeah.
And I think that's. I don't know. Yeah, like some people, are better when they're not grinding all the time. Like, they produce better stuff when they're.
It's like people. I think like often like your productivity is not that. I mean, it's obviously you need to work a bit if you want to get a lot done. But like a lot of the time, working more in excess does not actually. You don't actually produce that much more because like once you work over a certain amount, like there's kind of diminishing returns.
Yeah. Well, so it's all like Scandinavian idea of working 35-hour weeks instead of 45-hour weeks.
Which I think I've heard like one of the reasons why like America I think has like a real high like GDP per capita, but part of it's just that like Americans on average work more hours a week than Europeans do. But if you actually work it out in terms of how much they make per hour worked or something, it's like basically the same or even like slightly less.
Yeah. Well, it's actually mad. Like in America, they just don't have holidays, and it's just bizarre to me.
Yeah.
Like, even Alex in Canada, as our other brother,
he gets 2 or 3 weeks paid.
It might be. I don't think it's 3.
It might be 2.
It might be 2, and then in America it's like 1. Yeah. And then like a couple sick days.
Well, it's like there's no mandated, but I guess so. Like I guess still potentially some companies do offer it. Sure. It just depends.
But for that not to be law, it's like, what are you working for if you're not working for at least a holiday?
Yeah.
Is that just like, I just work forever? Seems bizarre. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, like, what's the point of life? Vision of work constantly, I suppose. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I wonder as well, like in terms of the future and like automation and all sort of stuff. I think that's a quite important point.
So much of it is gearing towards working less, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so much of it is the idea is that we are, automating all these processes and like systems so that we don't have to work ourselves. Like you say, we're working harder and harder.
It's interesting. I remember reading this thing. It was about how, like, apparently, I don't know if you guys know John Maynard Keynes. He's like a famous economist from the 30s or anything, but he's like...
Doesn't ring a bell, man.
But he's
Go on.
as far as economists from the 30s, he's actually reasonably famous, and anyway, and...
certain circles.
Anyway, and he has a whole branch of economics named after him called Keynesian. Anyway,
I've heard of that.
Keynesian economics is named after him.
Right.
Anyway, and he had this like prediction that in 50 years' time, everyone would be working 15-hour weeks because he like worked out if we like continue to get richer at the rate we're getting richer, then everyone will just decide, we should just work less. Yeah. And he was basically accurate in his prediction of how much richer we would get. Like he predicted by like the 2000 we'd be on average 4 times richer or something, which we on average basically are.
Yeah.
But like the work hour predictions were just completely wrong.
Yeah, because
like,
everyone just wants more now. Yeah. That's the thing. It's like if we were living, and it ties into climate change and all the things
like
as well.
Consumerism,
yeah. It's just if we just were happy with what people had in the 30s, which was like fuck all, and never going on holiday, and like holiday was like go down the lake probably, and like a flash dinner was like a roast, and you'd forget about TV and our smartphone, all the rest of it. Go outside play with a stick and a hoop,
and you still lived in tight knit communities as well.
Yeah,
like,
but like we would just be like any minimum wage job now you could happily have that life, in abundance, But obviously, everyone just wants more and more. That's only going to increase. So I suppose, like,
but also other things have gotten more expensive. I guess, like housing. Is costs like.
But then again, the houses are way better than they were in the 30s.
Yeah, that's
actually,
true.
That's a lie.
Well, most of the ones in Wellington are probably from the 30s.
Don't get us started on that topic.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like again, like with.
Maybe we'll just automate everything. I don't know.
The best thing to like reduce your carbon emissions is to basically just
never go on holiday.
Yeah, never do anything. Just don't consume anything.
But there's this prediction, that like it's basically going to be like WALL-E. Where everyone can no one actually works because everything's automated and everything just sort of comes to you and like it's sort of self-sufficient. Or whatever it might be. Like, is that just not feasible?
Thing is, I feel like that wouldn't happen because I feel like humans kind of feel like almost like we need to a certain degree. Yeah. I remember reading this thing which is something I could imagine happening is that like it was like talking about this idea of like bullshit jobs that like there's so many jobs in society and you try and think about like what benefit does this actually provide to the world?
Property managers.
And you're like and so it's like he was just this guy was just like a sociologist. He wasn't like an economist or anything, but he was saying that like it wouldn't surprise him if we like basically all the robot in like 50 years time all the robots are doing all the actual work, then all the humans are just emailing each other doing like banal office stuff.
That's so true. Just like work for the sake of it. It's actually that kind of brings it. I think about Minecraft. Actually, when is that? It's like just smash the block. It's just like it's entertaining just to be doing something. Like even if it is pretty much a massive waste of fucking time.
But it's still like how we approach everyone we don't know. So it's like, oh hey, I'm Ben. Nice to meet you, John. What do you do? It's still so much of who we are, and like we're proud to be whatever we are as well. So I don't think you'll ever get rid of that.
No.
Yeah, it's like people identify around like. I think of like dad. Like he's our dad is like a particularly strong example of that. Is that he like identifies as like a farmer, and I think farmers are probably more like that than most jobs are because it kind of defines your life in a way that if you're like an accountant, it probably doesn't quite to the same extent. Defines on how you live your entire life, but
definitely.
Like he identifies such as like a farmer is like the most important thing about him, basically.
Yeah, if he was not farm, like he would be miserable.
Yeah,
if he wasn't
identifies himself as a dairy farmer, even more so, right? Because he knows the difference between a sheep farmer and I heard this bill last time.
Yeah, did hear this bill.
Yeah,
definitely. And like he was saying, how they all have uniforms, like dairy farmers like a border suit and like gumboots, sheep farmers stubbies in a singlet,
like a swan, like like check swan dry suit.
Yeah, exactly.
That the people wear all the time. Yeah. It's funny. It's funny going back to Darfield, especially for like how many people just like dress like that.
Yeah,
they just walk around.
But then again, like, why wouldn't you?
Yeah, I mean, fair enough. I'm not criticising it.
But there's a certain amount of pride around that, isn't there?
Yeah, definitely.
And you're never going to get rid of that. I mean, I guess the alternative is that your hobbies become that source of pride, Like someone once told me, like, oh no, you should never, when you're going up to someone, you shouldn't ask, oh, what do you do? You should ask, what do you enjoy? What are your hobbies? But that's just weird. But still, I didn't end up doing that. But like, is it possible for those sort of hobbies just to become your part of your identity.
I feel like if you look at like the internet, it's weird all the things that like people form communities around and identity.
Yeah.
Like if you think about like gaming, for example, people will be like, oh, like, you know, people all like fandoms have these like weird purity tests. You know, where they're like, especially with gamers, they'll often be like, oh, you're not a real gamer though, you know, like you're just a casual, and I'm a real gamer, you know. And people like try to exclude other people from their in-group.
Yeah, we talk about that
the dumbest thing in the world. That like, oh, you know, you just play phone games.
You don't have a rig. Yeah, that's so true. But yeah, I know what you mean though. I think it's going to be interesting, like seeing how things play out. Because, you know, there is the whole like doom and gloom. Elon Musk always says, you know, bring on the singularity. Everyone's going to be made redundant. But already, like, jobs have been, you know, getting massively automized. Like, factory production in America has, like, American production has actually increased over time. Like, a lot of people think that production in America is being, like, decreasing, but actually just less people work in those factories, but far more is produced. And, you know, shopping supermarkets, you got the self-cashiers, but, you know, the world, or not the world, but like most, you know, New Zealand economy is basically a full employment, you know? There's always going to be a percentage of people who aren't going to work. And like, I think in the future with automation and like, it's great that people who don't want to work, who can't work, can be looked after. I think that's like, you know, that's what I kind of like about universal basic income and that sort of stuff is that I don't really care if some people don't want to work, as long as it's not a majority. If they just want to live for free, like dole bludgers or whatever, like, I don't really care. Like, I think they should be able to. And like, we live in a world now where we can support people like that, you know? Like, shouldn't they just be left to rot in the street? Like, why should you have to work, really? So, as long as it's not like... But I think most people, like you say, want to work.
And the thing about universal basic is you might be able to live off it, but like you wouldn't be able to have a very...
thrive.
Yeah, you wouldn't be able to like, have a very, you know, you wouldn't be able to afford like any luxuries, really.
And I think about like me and Ben starting the business and stuff, and I think we are fortunate to have had, like, come from, you know, supportive families and also have had good careers. And, you know, all the things that are associated with this sort of life. And, like, that's allowed us to try and do this. And without that, there's no way, you know? If you came from a really poor background and you basically were just a minimum wage job, because that sort of side of life has never been available to you, it's really sad that imagine how many people like us don't have the opportunity to do what we're doing. And, like, to have universal basic income where everyone has a chance to, be it, like, start a business or be it just... learn guitar or like do whatever, you know. And like, I do like the idea of that, you know. But at the same time, like, it's all just a hypothesis at the moment. But I think as we move towards the future,
it also wouldn't surprise me. I mean, you were like, I think there's also an assumption among a lot of people that like the jobs that are the easiest to automate are like the lowest skilled jobs, but that's actually not true at all. Like, I think I've heard with, like, I mean, you're always going on about lawyers, and like, I'm sure there'll still be lawyers in the future, but like, you might need fewer, a lot of the back end admin stuff. I'm sure you could automate. I've heard with like doctors with
GPs,
or I think it's radiologists in particular, who basically their job is to just like interpret scans basically for cancer and, you know, fracture, whatever.
Totally is.
And apparently that's I'm sure it is. I'm sure it's a hard job, but I've heard it's like quite automatable though. And they might need a lot. You'll still, I'm sure, need radiologists, but you might need a lot fewer of them. Whereas like jobs like being a nurse, where like half the job is just like you like physically caring for another person. There's basically like at this point, like we don't know how to automate that. Like, automating that is a long ways off.
For sure.
Or like, even just like being a chef or a bartender.
Or like working on road, you know, like a road work, anything, like you say, anything which needs complex
physical,
like, anything which is data based is far easier to, you know, you already, obviously it's already working, you know, you're working with an image, you're working with a spreadsheet, that's real easy to automate.
Even writing now, like a piece of
management or admin or
all these things are just they're so multifaceted. You know, it's not just, okay, we need to blow mold the cap for this bottle. You know, it's emotional. It is, you know, there's so many like different faculties needed with it. You know, like how would you automate a nurse, for example? That's just.
I always think as well, like the last job to get automated, like hairdresser. Like, when do you want a robot to cut your hair? Right? Like not for a long time. But like like, I think, you know, that's what everyone says as well. Like, more people will move into service jobs and. Like you say, like people can do what people are good at, and robots can do what robots are good at. But, you know, I think automated driving will be the next big one, because it'll be interesting well, not that's maybe not a good word. Hopefully, interesting in a positive way to see how people who are, because it's so many people who drive.
It's something like 40% of jobs are based around transport.
Yeah.
I think especially these days with like, I feel like almost more now than would have been employed of that. If you think about like the proliferation of like Uber Eats and those kind of services, I bet, whereas previously like there would have been a lot fewer taxi drivers 20 years ago than there are now, like, taxi drivers and pizza delivery people than there would be like these days. It used to just be pizza was basically the only food you could get delivered, whereas now you can get basically whatever you want delivered.
Yeah, and the same as well. Like, even in America, it's not just in America it's probably a bigger case of it because it's a massive country, but it's not just the drivers. It's like all those truck stops all over the country. All these towns that only really exist because they're on a motorway.
Yep.
As soon as you just got an electric car or an automated car which just drives straight on through the night, like what happens to all these communities? It's going to be. It's like I can see why people are scared, or like if you lived in that community or you had that job, you'd be like, shit, like what's going to happen? And who knows if it's going to be Elon Musk like next year it's all going to be
America will be particularly, because I think America is like more reliant on like road transport, whereas lots of other places are more reliant on like trains or boats.
Sure. But in New Zealand as well, there's a lot of towns that exist because of you going from one place to another. It's an agricultural centre or whatever, probably, bulls or whatever.
Yeah. It's just kind of a complete aside, but I was just doing some research. And I thought it was interesting that, like, basically before, like, the 1800s, they would just move everything by boat. Because, like, moving things, bulk goods, on a horse is so difficult. So you just move everything along rivers, or, like, in England, everything would just be moved by coastal shipping. They would just take it to the nearest port and then just ship it along the coast because, like, otherwise, like, carrying things on like trailers pulled by horses is just like really inefficient.
I guess that's why all our major townships are next to water.
That's like
because
that's basically
it's pretty hard to have a city in the middle of whatever the country until you
there was no highways. That was the highway of the 18th century, right?
It's kind of I just thought that was kind of interesting.
Well, it's interesting what you're saying as well about how you were saying that like in the Navy how basically everyone just was massively, well, not massively incompetent, but
it was just like how difficult, like, again, this is kind of an aside, but I was just talking to Euan earlier about how like one of the things that comes across is just how like difficult everything was. Like organising large organisations with just paper and pen across big distances was just a huge administrative task, and like quite often like ships would go to sea to like fight a battle, and then they'd realise, half our food's spoiled, so we actually will just have to go back to port now because otherwise we'll all go out to sea and starve. And so they'd like get out, and then the winds are like, okay, actually no, we mistimed the winds, so okay, we can't go out till next spring because like the weather's going to be shit for the next 5 months or whatever.
I guess that's why you have like 100-year war or whatever,
Yeah.
So it's like, we'll put it off for another year.
But next year I'm going to fucking it's like, it's a bit cold.
Like even just like moving armies, like when we studied like Alexander the Great and stuff like that, to move
like
a huge
logistics
army,
of everything like that,
to feed an army from Athens when you were in Persia or India, northern India. It's like, how do you do that?
That is the real, like, the real heroes of that are the administrators.
Sure. Yeah.
I doubt Alexander was running all the numbers all the time.
No.
Yeah.
It's just charge.
God, pathetic.
Easy.
No, so it's a back to the topic. I don't really know where the direction is going to take us.
It should be interesting to see.
Like, will there be a lot of people disenfranchised by like the fact that their jobs become automated, or will people be like, sweet, I can do something I enjoy now?
Well, but the thing with YouTube and being an influencer, isn't that like just converting your personality and your hobbies into like monetary?
That's kind of interesting. Yeah, that's because like
that's so true.
A thing I've also heard is that like a lot of like again, like before, a lot of like scientists or writers were just basically rich people who just had a bunch of leisure time so they could afford to do that kind of stuff. But people might not have viewed that as work. That was just leisure. Even though today most people would view writing a novel or like doing scientific research or whatever, people would acknowledge that as like work. But the idea of what even is work kind of changes over time.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's so true.
Yeah, that's cool, man. That's pretty optimistic. Future is the fact that I suppose it's just about like how do we share it. That's the thing. Like people obviously like suggest like robot tax and stuff like this. So as you automate, you have to.
So whoever just owns the robots doesn't just get insanely rich, and everyone else is just poor.
Yeah, because there's definitely room for that. Just one guy with a factory is just like, sweet. I'm producing all these cars, and it's I'm not paying anyone.
Yeah.
But how do you How do you do that? I suppose that's like a.
Because I guess like work is like the main way that money gets basically like redistributed to people, because that's how people get their money.
Yeah.
It's through like their wages.
Through labour, yeah, that's a fair point. Yeah, so how do you do that in a world where that's not, not the case? Yeah, I don't know. Because it's interesting actually, like UI, there's that guy in America who's running a his campaign based on that. Is it like
UBI, Andrew Yang, yeah.
And that's like probably, I doubt will win, but it's like, it's interesting that it's becoming more like in the forefront of like the political discourse, and like, they're testing it in certain areas. And I think I've read like Answers with Joe. Do you know that YouTube channel? It's quite a good like YouTube channel where a guy talks about just these different. And he did one on UBI recently. And
I've heard they've like trialed it or something in. Like they tried, like it's one of the Scandinavian countries. They did like a trial where they did it with like a small city or something.
Yeah.
Or like a big town or something, and they just gave everyone a UBI just to like see what would happen, basically.
Yeah.
And apparently, I think the research that people actually don't work any less.
No.
Like most people will just use it to have more financial security.
Yeah, exactly.
And they'll just like, because it's not actually that much money, so it's like you wouldn't be, if you're already earning a bit of money working, you wouldn't be able to maintain your like current lifestyle.
Well, I think that's the thing. Is they've tried it in different areas, and like different studies give different amount of money to different people, and like who knows, if it gets to a certain point where you can not work, you're just like, sweet, I'm not going to work anymore. But obviously if you're not earning enough to you are going to keep doing your own.
Well, I think also a good thing about it is like the way that like the benefit system works is it can often like weirdly incentivize people not to work, because I think I've heard that like a lot of the time if you're like on a benefit, you obviously don't have much work experience, it's not easy. The only job a lot of the time you can find is like something that's part-time and like not very many hours, but then if you get any work, you can't get the benefit. So like often you actually get more on the benefit, so it makes sense to you to not take that job. Whereas if it was just like universal, then it's just any extra money is good, basically.
Yeah, no, for sure.
And then you can maybe build work experience and get a better job, and it kind of prevents people. It can encourage people not to do that, which is quite bad, really.
Yeah,
I think people are naturally competitive. Like there's always like a social hierarchy. And that you're always going to have people who are going to work harder and want to have more than their neighbour.
I totally agree. I think most people, as we were talking about before, most people don't just want to sit around and do nothing all day. Because it's real boring.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was thinking about our business too. Like, I mean, it's all very good. I mean, you and I could just be creating our own visualizations of spaceships and whatever we might want to do without, that's what we really enjoy.
Yeah.
But half the enjoyment actually comes from the validation of selling these things. From actually like putting it out there in the world and saying, you are giving me something that I want. I'm going to pay.
Well, if people pay you for it, that's like evidence that your work is valuable, because people are putting their money behind it.
And that's hugely rewarding. That is like the really rewarding part of business.
Yeah.
So I think like that's not to be underestimated.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
Well.
Oh wow. Another problem solved, I guess.
Can tick that one off the list.
Do you want to play us another banjo song to leave on?
Yeah, just play us
Sure.
You can play, what was the one you played for? You Are My Sunshine?
Okay, yeah.
That's a classic.
That's pretty good.
That was pretty good. I enjoyed that
song people might actually know.
So I guess we'll wrap up here with that at the end. And I will put a link to Calum's podcast if you want to listen to more inane babbling.
And we'll
while you play Minecraft.
Yeah.
And we'll read out his thesis as soon as it's released.
Yeah.
Episode 500 by then, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Well, I'm supposed to get I've got a draft due like in a week and a half.
So maybe in like a month or two.
Yeah.
We can have another discussion about that.
All right, thank you all, and we will see you next week.
Yeah. Go on, Calum.
Beautiful. So good.